The mountain air of Glacier National Park split around Emily Carter's body as she fell, her scream cutting through Montana's pristine wilderness like a blade through silk. 20 feet down, jagged rocks waited to claim another victim from Eagle's Crest, the cliff that locals whispered had never given back what it took. But today would be different. Above the precipice, where betrayal still hung thick as morning mist, a flash of gray fur appeared against the cloudless sky. The wolf's golden eyes held an intelligence that defied nature's laws. Recognizing the girl who once stitched its wounds with trembling teenage hands, Luna's howl rose not the hunting call known to these ancient peaks, but something else entirely. Something that would bring helicopters and confessions, sisters and salvations, truth and redemption. Some say wolves don't save humans. They never met Luna. And they never knew that sometimes our greatest betrayals become doorways to our most profound redemptions. Before we continue, please leave a like and let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Emily Carter had never truly belonged anywhere, except perhaps among the wounded creatures at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center outside Whitefish, Montana. Adopted at 5 from St. Mary's Children's Home, she carried her abandonment like a stone in her chest. Even as David and Margaret Carter showered her with the love most biological parents only dream of offering. They were veterinarians, both of them, with hands gentle enough to mend broken wings and hearts spacious enough to hold a damaged child. At 18, Emily moved through Whitefish High School like a shadow noticed but never truly seen, present but never quite included. Her gift with animals, particularly predators, unnerved her classmates. While they spent weekends at house parties, she spent hers cleaning cages and hand-feeding orphaned fox kits. The wolves at the center responded to her presence with an unusual calm that even seasoned handlers couldn't explain. Sarah Mitchell inhabited a different universe entirely, though they shared the same school hallways. Blonde where Emily was dark, confident where Emily hesitated, Sarah ruled Whitefish High's social hierarchy with the casual cruelty of those who've never known real want. Her father, Tom Harrison, had been a Glacier National Park ranger for 30 years, though he'd taken his wife's name after marriage, a detail that raised eyebrows in their conservative community. Rebecca Mitchell, Sarah's mother, carried herself with the rigid perfection of someone guarding terrible secrets. Tom Harrison knew every trail, every peak, every wolf pack in Glacier's vast wilderness. At 55, his weathered face mapped decades of Montana winters and summer forest fires. Lately, though, his deepest worry wasn't about wildlife management or trail safety. It was about the darkness growing in his daughter's eyes, a cruelty that seemed foreign to the child he'd raised. Jake Williams, Sarah's boyfriend and the school's football captain, possessed the kind of moral flexibility that made him popular but unreliable. Madison Brooks, Sarah's closest friend, carried enough conscience for both of them, though she rarely voiced her discomfort with Sarah's increasingly vicious treatment of Emily. The tension between the two girls had escalated over 6 months, beginning with small slights and growing into a campaign of psychological warfare. Emily endured it all with the same quiet patience she showed with frightened animals, never knowing that Sarah's hatred stemmed from a source deeper than teenage rivalry, a secret that would soon send one of them over a cliff's edge and bring the other to her knees. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered not through social media or text, but in person. Sarah Mitchell standing at Emily's locker with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We're going hiking Saturday," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone of false sweetness that had preceded every humiliation of the past 6 months. "Eagle's Crest Trail. You should come. It's time we put all this behind us." Emily's fingers tightened on her textbook. 6 months of deleted lab assignments, rumors about her creepy connection with animals, and whispered jokes about the orphan girl who thinks she's Dr. Dolittle. Now this sudden olive branch felt like another trap. Yet something in Sarah's expression seemed different, desperate, almost pleading. "I don't know," Emily began, but Sarah cut her off. "Please, I know I've been horrible. Jake's been on my case about it, and he's right. We're graduating soon. Let's not end high school this way." Sarah's hand briefly touched Emily's arm, and Emily noticed it trembling. My dad knows the trail better than anyone. It'll be safe. Madison's coming too, and a few others. Just, please. That evening, Emily discussed it with her parents over dinner. David Carter, ever the optimist, encouraged her to go. People can change, sweetheart. Maybe Sarah's growing up. Margaret was more cautious, but ultimately supportive. You've shown such grace through all of this, Emily. If you feel comfortable going, we trust your judgment. Emily touched the wolf pendant hanging around her neck, a gift that had arrived on her 16th birthday with no card. No explanation, just a note saying, "For the girl who understands." She'd always wondered about its origin, but wearing it made her feel protected somehow. Saturday morning, she clasped it on and drove to Glacier National Park's entrance, where the group had agreed to meet. 5 teenagers stood by the trailhead at 8 o'clock sharp, Sarah in expensive hiking gear that looked fresh from the tags, Jake wearing his Letterman jacket despite the morning's warmth, Madison nervously adjusting her backpack, and 2 others Emily recognized with a sinking heart, Tyler Ross and Ashley Chen, Sarah's cruelest lieutenants in the school's social warfare. Emily! Sarah's greeting rang too bright, too loud. I'm so glad you came. The hug she offered felt like being embraced by a mannequin. Jake nodded uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact, while Madison managed a genuine if worried smile. Tyler and Ashley exchanged smirks that made Emily's stomach clench. The trek began with forced cheerfulness. Sarah chatted about graduation plans in college, as if they'd been friends all along. The Hidden Valley Trail wound through dense forest before opening to mountain meadows, and despite her discomfort, Emily couldn't help but appreciate the landscape's raw beauty. Mountain lupines painted purple swaths across the valleys, and overhead, golden eagles circled on thermal currents. You probably know all about this stuff, Sarah said when Emily identified a Clark's nutcracker. The comment carried an edge, though Sarah's smile remained fixed. All those hours at that animal place. The Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, Emily corrected gently. We're actually working with a wolf pack that... God, do you ever stop? Ashley interrupted, laughing. We get it. You're like one with nature or whatever. Tyler joined in. Maybe she was raised by wolves. Would explain why she's so weird. Guys, stop, Madison said, but her protest was weak, uncertain. Jake remained silent, his discomfort visible as he walked slightly apart from the group. Emily noticed him checking his phone repeatedly, frowning at the lack of signal. Sarah, too, kept pulling out her phone, her expression darkening each time she looked at the blank screen. The ascent grew steeper as they approached Eagle's Crest. Emily's knowledge of the terrain, meant to keep everyone safe, only seemed to irritate Sarah more. When Emily warned about the unstable section of trail, Sarah snapped. We know how to walk, Emily. My father's been bringing me here since I was 5. The final approach to Eagle's Crest required scrambling over granite boulders. The cliff itself was a spectacular viewpoint, a sheer drop of nearly 100 feet to a boulder field below, with a narrow ledge system about 20 feet down that rock climbers sometimes used. The view stretched across the entire valley, showcasing Glacier's untamed grandeur. Perfect spot for a photo, Sarah announced. But her voice had changed. The fake friendliness evaporated like morning dew under sudden heat. Emily, stand over there, by the edge. I'm good here, thanks, Emily replied, instinct making her step back from the precipice. What's wrong? Sarah moved closer, and Emily saw something wild in her eyes. Afraid? Sarah, what are you doing? Madison asked nervously. Just having a conversation with my dear friend Emily. Sarah's laugh was bitter, broken. My perfect, special friend who everyone loves. The girl who's so good with animals, so kind, so fucking perfect, despite being nobody from nowhere. Sarah, chill, Jake said, stepping forward, but Tyler blocked his path. You know what I found out last week? Sarah's voice rose, shaking with rage. Why my mother's been acting so strange lately. Why she can't look me in the eye anymore. She pulled a folded paper from her pocket. A photograph, yellowed with age. This is her at 15. 15 holding a baby she gave away. A baby born on March 15th, 18 years ago. Emily's world tilted. March 15th was her birthday. You, Sarah's voice broke completely. You're not some random orphan. You're the child she gave away. The firstborn she never told anyone about. You stole everything that should have been mine, her first smiles, her first everything. And now you're here, in my town, in my school, probably laughing at all of us behind our backs because you're her real daughter and I'm just the replacement she kept. I didn't know, Emily whispered, the photograph trembling in her vision. Sarah, I swear I didn't. Liar. The push came with the scream. Sarah's hands connecting with Emily's shoulders in an explosion of 18 years of insecurity and rage. It wasn't planned, wasn't calculated, just pure emotional combustion that sent Emily backward over the cliff's edge. The last thing Emily saw before gravity claimed her was the horror replacing fury on Sarah's face. Jake lunging forward too late, and Madison's scream joining her own as she fell toward the unforgiving rocks below. The human body falls at 32 feet per second squared, a law of physics that cares nothing for youth or innocence. Emily's descent should have lasted less than 2 seconds, barely enough time for a final thought before impact. But 15 feet down, her backpack caught on a jutting piece of granite, spinning her violently sideways. The centrifugal force slammed her into the cliff face, her ribs connecting with a narrow ledge that shouldn't have been wide enough to catch anything larger than a mountain goat. The impact drove the air from her lungs in a violent expulsion that left her gasping like a landed fish. Pain exploded through her left side ribs, cracking with an audible snap that echoed off the canyon walls. Her right ankle, trapped momentarily in a crevice during the chaotic fall, twisted at an angle that sent lightning bolts of agony up her leg. But she was alive, pressed against cold granite on a ledge no wider than a bookshelf, 20 feet below where betrayal had just rewritten her entire existence. Above her, chaos erupted with the particular frenzy of teenagers confronting consequences they never imagined. Sarah stood frozen at the cliff's edge, her hands still extended in the ghost position of the push, her face drained of all color. The rage that had possessed her moments before evaporated, replaced by a horror so complete it seemed to hollow her out from the inside. "Oh God! Oh God! Oh God!" she repeated, the words running together into a meaningless mantra. Then, inexplicably, she began to laugh, a broken, hysterical sound that made everyone step back from her. Jake shoved Tyler aside with enough force to send the other boy sprawling. "Emily!" He dropped to his stomach, crawling to the edge despite his fear of heights. "Emily? Can you hear me?" 20 feet below, Emily managed to turn her head enough to see Jake's terrified face peering down. "I'm here," she croaked, each word sending fresh spears of pain through her damaged ribs. "I'm hurt. Can't move much." "She's alive," Jake shouted back to the others. "She's on a ledge." Without hesitation, he began looking for handholds, preparing to climb down despite having no rope, no equipment, no experience beyond a summer of indoor rock climbing at the gym. Jake. "No." Madison grabbed his arm. "You'll fall too. We need help." She pulled out her phone, frantically dialing 911, but the no-signal icon mocked her efforts. They were miles from the nearest cell tower, deep in Glacier's backcountry where technology meant nothing. Tyler and Ashley had backed away from the entire scene, their earlier cruelty transformed into naked fear. "We need to get out of here," Tyler muttered, already edging toward the trail. "This is insane. We need to leave now." "You're not going anywhere," Jake snarled, abandoning his climbing attempt to block their retreat. "You were part of this. We didn't push her," Ashley protested, her voice shrill with panic. "That was all Sarah. We didn't know she was going to—" "Shut up," Madison screamed at them all. "Just shut up and let me think." She was crying now, mascara running in black streams down her cheeks as she tried phone after phone, begging for just one bar of signal. Below them, Emily fought through waves of pain to assess her situation. The ledge was stable but narrow, perhaps 18 inches at its widest point. Any significant movement risked sending her tumbling the remaining 70 feet to certain death. Her ribs screamed with each breath, and her ankle was already swelling inside her hiking boot. Blood trickled from numerous cuts where the granite had torn through her clothing and skin during the fall. "Help!" she called out, her voice barely carrying. Then louder, despite the agony it caused. "Help me, please. Somebody help me." Sarah's hysterical laughter transformed into sobbing. She collapsed to her knees at the cliff's edge, rocking back and forth. "I didn't mean it," she wailed. "I didn't mean to push her. It just happened. Mom's going to. Dad's going to. Oh God, what did I do?" That's when Emily saw a flash of gray moving through the tree line 50 yards away. At first, she thought the pain was causing hallucinations. But the wolf emerged from the shadows with the fluid grace of smoke-given form, and Emily's heart nearly stopped for an entirely different reason. The scar ran from the wolf's left shoulder across its chest, a wound Emily had stitched 3 years ago when she'd found the young wolf in a trap, nearly dead from blood loss. She'd hidden the animal in a maintenance shed at the rehabilitation center for 3 months, nursing it back to health in secret, knowing the center's policy prohibited treating large predators. She'd named her Luna for the full moon under which they'd met. Luna approached the cliff's edge with none of the caution wild wolves typically showed around humans. The teenagers above scattered backward, their screams adding to the chaos, all except Sarah, who remained frozen on her knees, staring at the massive predator now standing less than 10 feet away. "Don't run," Emily called up, though each word was torture. "Don't run or make sudden movements." Luna's golden eyes found Emily's across the impossible distance. The wolf's head tilted, and a low whine emerged from its throat, not aggressive, but questioning, almost concerned. Emily knew it was impossible, knew that wolves didn't recognize individual humans after years of separation, knew that everything she was seeing defied wildlife biology. But Luna's gaze held an intelligence that transcended scientific explanation. "Luna," Emily whispered, and the wolf's ears pricked forward. "Luna, I need help. Please." What happened next would be debated by wildlife experts for years. Luna sat back on her haunches and released a howl unlike any hunting call or territorial announcement in the wolf communication repertoire. It started low, building to a crescendo that echoed off every canyon wall, carrying for miles through the mountain valleys. It wasn't the social howl wolves used to gather their pack, or the aggressive howl meant to warn off intruders. This was something else urgent, repetitive, almost like an alarm. "What's it doing?" Madison whispered, pressed against Jake's back. I think it's calling for help," Jake said, though the words sounded insane even to him. Luna howled again, then again, maintaining the exact same pitch and duration each time. Within minutes, answering howls rose from different directions, Luna's pack responding to their leader's strange summons. 3 more wolves materialized from the forest, a massive black male, a smaller gray female, and a young wolf barely out of adolescence. The teenagers huddled together in absolute terror as the pack formed a loose circle around them, not attacking but clearly preventing any attempt to leave. Tyler made one move toward the trail, and the black male stepped into his path with a warning growl that sent him scrambling backward. "They're going to kill us," Ashley sobbed, clutching Madison's arm. But Emily, despite her pain, felt no fear. She knew these wolves. She'd seen them from a distance during her work at the center, had studied their patterns and behaviors. Luna's pack was one of the most stable and least aggressive in Glacier. They avoided humans religiously, or at least, they always had before. "They won't hurt you," Emily called up, though she could barely believe what she was witnessing. "Just stay still. Don't run." Sarah finally looked away from Luna to peer down at Emily. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice broken. "Emily, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean—" "Save it," Jake cut her off harshly. "We need to focus on getting help." Luna howled again, and this time, The entire pack joined in. The sound was overwhelming, primal, and impossibly loud. It rolled across the mountains like thunder, a wall of sound that seemed to shake the very air. Anyone within 5 miles would hear it. Any ranger, any hiker, any pilot flying overhead would know something extraordinary was happening at Eagle's Crest. "Smart girl," Emily whispered to the wolf she'd saved 3 years ago, tears streaming down her face as she realized Luna might now be returning the favor. "Good girl, Luna." The wolf looked down at her once more, and Emily could have sworn she saw recognition in those golden eyes, not just of a familiar human, but of a friend, a pack member, someone worth saving. Luna settled into a sphinx-like position at the cliff's edge, clearly prepared to wait as long as necessary, her pack maintaining their circle around the increasingly terrified teenagers. Madison had stopped trying to call 911, instead recording everything on her phone with shaking hands. "No one's going to believe this," she whispered. "No one's ever going to believe this." Above them all, a distant mechanical thrum began to grow louder, the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors cutting through mountain air. Someone had heard Luna's call. Someone was coming. Emily closed her eyes, pressing her cheek against the cold granite, and whispered a prayer of gratitude to whatever force had brought Luna back into her life at the exact moment she needed her most. The wolf's continued howls felt like a lifeline, each one saying the same thing: "Hold on, help is coming. You're not alone." Tom Harrison had been tracking wolf movements in Glacier National Park for 3 decades, but the radio report crackling through his helicopter's speakers made him frown with concern. "Ranger Station to Harrison. We've got multiple reports of unusual wolf activity in Hidden Valley. Sustained howling from Eagle's Crest area. Going on 15 minutes now. Hikers are getting spooked." Tom adjusted his heading, banking the helicopter toward the coordinates. He knew every pack in these mountains, their territories, their patterns, their personalities. The Hidden Valley Pack, led by a female they'd designated F-47, but whom locals called Luna, was typically the most elusive. They avoided human contact with an almost supernatural consistency, which made this reported behavior deeply troubling. "Copy that. Station. I'm 5 minutes out from Eagle's Crest. Any reports of injured hikers? That's aggressive howling or distress." Tom's mind was already running through possibilities. Rabies, injury to the alpha, territorial dispute with another pack, none of them good. Negative on injuries reported, but Tom, the dispatcher hesitated. "It's weird. Hikers describe it as repetitive, almost mechanical, same pitch, same duration, like an alarm." Tom's frown deepened. In 30 years, he'd never heard of wolves behaving that way. As his helicopter crested the ridgeline, the howling hit him even through the aircraft's insulation powerful. Urgent, unlike anything in his extensive experience. Then he saw them 4 wolves arranged in a perfect circle around a group of teenagers at Eagle's Crest, the known cliff that had claimed 3 lives in the past decade. His heart stopped. Even from 500 feet up, he recognized the blonde hair, the expensive purple jacket he'd bought her last Christmas. Sarah. His daughter was in that circle of predators. "Station. I have visual on Eagle's Crest. 4 wolves surrounding approximately 5 juveniles. No active aggression visible. But, Christ, it's like they're holding them there." Tom began descending carefully, aware that helicopter noise could trigger a panic response in the wolves. "Request immediate backup, medical and rescue teams, and get me someone from wildlife management." As he descended, Tom saw something that made his blood run cold. One of the teenagers was missing. 5 had gone up. Sarah had told him that much this morning, claiming it was a reconciliation hike with that girl she'd been tormenting. Emily Carter. 4 teenagers in the circle, which meant... "Station, possible fall from cliff." "Repeat. Possible fall victim at Eagle's Crest. Need search and rescue immediately." Tom's hands, steady through hundreds of rescues, trembled slightly as he maneuvered closer. The wolves looked up at the helicopter but didn't scatter as they should have. Luna, he recognized her distinctive gray coat and the scar across her chest, remained positioned at the cliff's edge. Looking down, Then he saw her Emily Carter, 20 feet down on a ledge that couldn't have been more than 18 inches wide, clearly injured, possibly dying. The girl who'd been nothing but kind, despite his daughter's cruelty. The girl he'd failed to protect. Visual on victim, Tom radioed, his professional training overriding his paternal panic. Female, approximately 18 years old, on a ledge 20 feet below cliff edge, conscious but injured. Beginning extraction protocol. Tom had to make a critical decision. Landing would spook the wolves, possibly causing them to attack or forcing the teenagers to run, which could trigger chase instinct. But Emily needed immediate extraction. He chose a middle path, hovering 50 feet up while using the helicopter's external speaker system. "This is Ranger Harrison. Everyone remain completely still. Do not run. Do not make sudden movements. Sarah, if you can hear me, raise your right hand slowly." He watched his daughter's arm rise shakily. She was sobbing. He could see that even from this height. The boy, Jake Williams. Tom recognized him now had his arms around Sarah. Whether restraining or comforting, Tom couldn't tell. "Help is coming. The wolves will not attack if you stay still. Emily, if you can hear me, move your right hand." The hand movement from the ledge was weak but visible. Alive. Thank God. Alive. The next 20 minutes felt like hours. The rescue helicopter arrived with a trained crew who'd performed dozens of cliff extractions. Tom maintained his hover, using his knowledge of wolf behavior to coordinate the rescue. He knew Luna's pack, had tracked them for 5 years. The alpha female had always shown unusual intelligence, but this was beyond anything in scientific literature. Rescue 1. Approach from the north, slow and steady. The wolves are not displaying aggression, but they're containing the scene. It's like they're waiting for us to get the victim. The rescue helicopter's approach finally triggered some wolf instinct. The 3 subordinate wolves melted back into the tree line, but Luna remained, her golden eyes never leaving the ledge where Emily lay. The rescue crew rappelled down with the efficiency born of repetition: basket stretcher, cervical collar, careful transfer of the injured girl who cried out only once as they moved her. Multiple rib fractures, possible internal bleeding, ankle fracture. The paramedic reported over the radio. "Stable but critical. We need to move now." As Emily's stretcher was winched up, Luna finally stood. She looked directly at the rescued girl, released one more long, mournful howl, and then vanished into the forest like smoke dissipating. The teenagers, suddenly freed from their lupine prison, collapsed where they stood. Tom landed the moment the rescue helicopter cleared the area. He ran to Sarah, part of him wanting to comfort his daughter, part wanting to demand what the hell had happened. She fell into his arms, sobbing incoherently about Emily, about her mother, about something being her fault. "Dad, I didn't mean. I pushed her. Dad, I pushed her, and she fell, and I thought I killed her, and the wolves came, and..." Tom's world tilted. His daughter, his Sarah, had pushed someone off a cliff. The radio on his belt crackled with updates as he held his sobbing daughter, trying to process the impossibility of what she was confessing. "Get in the helicopter," he said, his voice hollow. "All of you. Now." The flight to Kalispell Regional Medical Center took 20 minutes. Tom radioed ahead, ensuring law enforcement would meet them there. His daughter had just confessed to attempted murder. The girl he'd failed to protect was fighting for her life. And somehow, impossibly, a pack of wolves had prevented everyone from fleeing the scene. At the hospital, chaos reigned. Emily was rushed into surgery, internal bleeding, collapsed lung, 3 broken ribs, fractured ankle, severe concussion. Her adoptive parents, David and Margaret Carter, arrived within minutes, their faces masks of controlled terror. Tom couldn't meet their eyes. Sarah's breakdown was complete. She sat in a hospital security room, rocking back and forth, telling the same story over and over to increasingly skeptical police officers. "She's my sister," she kept saying. "My mother's real daughter, the one she gave away. I found the diary. I know about everything." Tom felt the foundation of his life cracking. "What diary, Sarah? What are you talking about?" That's when Rebecca arrived. And Tom saw the truth written across his wife's face before she said a word. The perfect life they'd built. The careful family they'd constructed, all of it built on a lie she'd kept for 18 years. Tom. Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. I need to tell you something. About before we met. About Emily. The story came out in broken pieces. Rebecca, 15 years old, pregnant by a boy who'd died in Afghanistan before he even knew about the baby. Her parents' shame. The quiet adoption through St. Mary's. The promise to never speak of it again. Moving to Montana to start fresh. Meeting Tom. Building a life that didn't include the daughter she'd given away. You've been married to me for 17 years, Tom said, his voice dangerously quiet. And you never thought to mention you had another child. I was 15. My parents said it was best for everyone. I thought she was somewhere far away, with a good family. I never imagined. When the Carters moved here 5 years ago, when I saw her at school events, I knew. God help me. I knew the moment I saw her. She has my mother's eyes. Tom? My exact mother's eyes. And you said nothing. You let our daughter torment her, knowing they were sisters. Half-sisters, Rebecca corrected, as if that distinction mattered now. I tried to make Sarah stop. I tried to intervene without explaining why. But last week, Sarah found my old diary in the attic. She confronted me, and I couldn't lie anymore. Tom thought of Emily on that ledge, broken and bleeding because of a secret his wife had kept, a truth that had poisoned his daughter's mind. She could have died. Sarah pushed her off a cliff because of your lie. I know, Rebecca sobbed. Don't you think I know that? Meanwhile, the story of the wolf rescue had already begun spreading through Whitefish like wildfire. Madison's phone footage, shaky but unmistakable, showed Luna's pack surrounding them, not attacking but clearly holding them in place. Wildlife experts from the University of Montana were already calling it unprecedented, possibly the most significant wolf-human interaction ever documented. Jake and Madison gave their statements to police, both confirming that Sarah had pushed Emily deliberately after revealing the family connection. Tyler and Ashley, true to form, tried to minimize their involvement, claiming they had no idea what Sarah planned. But their cruel comments on the trail, their participation in months of bullying, all came out. By evening, the news had reached the local media. Miracle at Eagles Crest Wolves Save Pushed Teen ran alongside shocking family secret behind cliff pushing. Sarah's friends distanced themselves immediately, their parents forbidding contact with someone who'd committed attempted murder. The same teenagers who'd laughed at Sarah's cruel jokes about Emily now spoke to reporters about how they'd always known something was off about her. David Carter finally emerged from the ICU at midnight, exhausted but relieved. She's stable, he told Tom and Rebecca, who'd been waiting in separate corners of the waiting room. Surgery went well. She's going to make it. Thank God, Tom breathed, then looked David in the eye. I'm sorry. For what my daughter did. For not stopping it sooner. For all of it. David's expression was unreadable. Your daughter tried to kill mine because of a secret your wife kept. Emily is the kindest soul I know, and she nearly died because of your family's lies. I know. There's no excuse. No. David cut him off. There isn't. But Emily would want me to tell you something. Yesterday, she told us she was worried about Sarah. Said something seemed really wrong lately. More than just teenage cruelty. She wanted to reach out, to help. That's why she went on that hike, even after everything Sarah did to her. Emily was trying to help. Margaret Carter joined her husband, her face drawn with exhaustion and grief. The wolves, she said quietly. Emily saved one 3 years ago. Luna. She thought we didn't know, but we did. We let her think it was secret because we saw how much it meant to her, how healing that wolf helped her process her own abandonment trauma. Tom's radio crackled. Harrison, we need you at the station. Fish and Wildlife wants a full report on the wolf incident. And Tom, Internal Affairs will be investigating why your daughter was on a closed trail. Eagle's Crest has been off limits to civilians for 2 weeks due to unstable conditions. Another lie revealed. Tom had given Sarah the access codes, trusting her to show good judgment. He'd enabled this tragedy as much as anyone. As the night wore on, the full weight of the day's events settled over everyone. Emily Carter lay unconscious in the ICU, machines breathing for her while her body fought to heal. Sarah Mitchell sat in psychiatric hold, having been deemed a danger to herself after expressing suicidal ideation. Rebecca Mitchell faced not only the dissolution of her marriage but potential charges for child abandonment and failure to report. Tom Harrison's career as a ranger built on trust and judgment hung by a thread. And somewhere in the mountains, Luna's pack ran through moonlit forests, having played their part in a drama that would reshape every life they'd touched. The wolves had done something unprecedented, something that would fuel scientific debate for years. But in the end, it was beautifully simple. They'd recognized someone worth saving and refused to let her story end on that ledge. The whitefish community, always quick to judge and quicker to gossip, found itself grappling with questions that had no easy answers. How does a mother live with such a secret? How does a daughter process learning she has a sister she tried to kill? How does a town reconcile the miracle of the wolves with the horror of what made their intervention necessary? The Flathead County Courthouse had never seen a case quite like this. District Attorney Patricia Brennan, a woman who'd prosecuted everything from poaching to murder in her 20-year career, sat across from Emily Carter's hospital bed, struggling to maintain professional composure as the 18-year-old girl made her unprecedented request. "You understand that Sarah Mitchell pushed you off a cliff," Brennan said slowly, as if Emily might have suffered more brain damage than the doctors detected. "With intent to harm. That's attempted murder in the 2nd degree. Miss Carter, she could face 25 years in prison." Emily's parents flanked her bed, their faces showing the strain of the past week. Emily herself looked fragile, pale, bandaged, breathing carefully around her healing ribs, but her eyes held a determination that reminded everyone she'd survived more than just a fall. "I understand the charges," Emily said, her voice stronger than her appearance suggested. "I also understand that I have the right to refuse to cooperate with prosecution. I won't testify against her." "Emily, sweetie," Margaret began, but Emily raised her hand slightly. "I have conditions," Emily continued, addressing the district attorney. "I'll provide a victim impact statement supporting alternative sentencing if Sarah agrees to 500 hours of community service at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, undergoes mandatory therapy for 18 months, and participates in a restorative justice program." Brennan exchanged glances with the 2 detectives present. "Miss Carter, this young woman tried to kill you. The state can prosecute without your cooperation. We have other witnesses who will testify that Sarah was emotionally distressed after learning we're biological half-sisters," Emily interrupted. "Any decent defense attorney will argue temporary insanity, diminished capacity. You'll spend 2 years in court, traumatize everyone further, and maybe get a manslaughter conviction that does nothing to actually help anyone heal." The room fell silent. Outside the hospital window, news vans remained parked, the story having captured national attention. Miracle Wolf Rescue competed with Family Secret attempted murder for headline space, while legal experts debated on cable news about prosecutorial discretion versus public safety. "There's more," Emily said. "Tom Harrison shouldn't lose his job over this. He's the best ranger Glacier has, and Sarah needs her father stable and employed, not destroyed by guilt and unemployment." 3 floors up, Sarah Mitchell sat in the psychiatric ward's evaluation room, her 3rd session with Dr. James Whitfield. She hadn't eaten in 4 days, hadn't stopped crying except when sedated, and had twice been placed on suicide watch after expressing detailed plans to return to Eagle's Crest and finish what she started this time on herself. "Tell me about finding the diary," Dr. Whitfield prompted gently. Sarah's voice came out raw, broken. "Mom was at work. I was looking for Christmas decorations in the attic. The box was labeled Rebecca High School. I thought it might have old photos. She laughed bitterly. It had photos. All right. Her holding a baby. Pages and pages about the baby she gave up, how perfect she was, how it killed her to let her go. How did you connect this to Emily? The dates, the hospital, St. Mary's adoption record mentioned in one entry. Then I really looked at Emily for the first time. She has my grandmother's eyes, these unusual green-gold eyes that skip generations. Mom always said I should have inherited them, but I got Dad's brown eyes instead. Sarah pulled her knees to her chest. The first daughter got everything that should have been mine, even the eyes I was supposed to have. Meanwhile, Jake Williams and Madison Brooks sat in the district attorney's conference room, providing their fifth round of statements. Both had turned over their phones, social media histories, everything documenting months of escalating bullying that culminated in attempted murder. She planned the hike, Madison said, tears streaming down her face as she scrolled through text messages. But I don't think she planned to push Emily. It was like something snapped when she started talking about the diary. Jake's testimony was even more damning. Sarah had been obsessing about Emily for months, but it got worse after she found out about the biological connection. She kept saying Emily had stolen her life. I tried to calm her down, but I should have done more. I should have told someone. Tyler Ross and Ashley Chen, however, had attempted a different strategy: denial and deflection. They'd hired lawyers, claimed they were traumatized bystanders, victims themselves of Sarah's manipulation. But Madison's phone contained videos of them actively participating in the bullying, including one where Tyler suggested they accidentally push Emily during the hike, though he claimed it was a joke. The investigation revealed layers of complicity. Text messages showed the group discussing ways to humiliate Emily. Instagram posts documented their campaign of social destruction. Even their parents' dismissive responses to school complaints came under scrutiny. The entire social ecosystem that enabled Sarah's behavior was exposed. Then came the wildlife investigation, which took an unexpected turn when Ranger Michelle Crow Dog discovered something extraordinary in the park's tracking data. Luna, the alpha female of the Hidden Valley Pack, had been fitted with a GPS collar in 2021 as part of a wolf behavior study. The data showed something remarkable. "Look at this," Crow Dog told Tom Harrison, who'd been temporarily suspended pending investigation. 3 years ago, Luna disappeared from pack territory for 3 months. The collar malfunctioned, or so we thought. But look at these coordinates. The GPS points, when mapped, centered around the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center where Emily volunteered. For 3 months, the wolf had remained within a half-mile radius of the center, then returned to the wild. "That's impossible," Tom said. "A wild wolf wouldn't stay near human habitation that long unless someone was caring for it," Crow Dog finished. "Emily Carter saved Luna, didn't she?" The revelation sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Dr. Patricia Thornton from the University of Montana's Wildlife Biology Department called it the most significant documented case of wolf-human reciprocal altruism ever recorded. The wolf hadn't just randomly appeared at the cliff. Luna had recognized Emily's voice, her scent, and responded to help the human who'd once saved her life. But this discovery created a new problem. Federal wildlife regulations strictly prohibited unauthorized rehabilitation of wolves. Emily had technically committed a federal crime. More immediately concerning, Luna's pack had shown they would approach humans to protect Emily, potentially putting both species at risk. "We'll have to relocate them," Regional Wildlife Director Robert Hendricks announced at an emergency meeting. "A pack that's lost fear of humans is dangerous." Tom Harrison, despite his suspension, attended the public hearing. "You're punishing wolves for showing more humanity than humans did that day," he argued, but his credibility was shattered. That's when Emily made her second shocking decision. Still recovering, she arrived at the hearing in a wheelchair, pushed by David Carter. Her testimony was simple but powerful. "Luna saved my life," she said to the packed room. "Not because she's habituated to humans, but because she recognized a specific human who'd helped her. This isn't dangerous behavior, it's proof of something extraordinary. Wolves are capable of individual recognition, memory, and chosen reciprocal behavior. If you relocate them, You're destroying the chance to study something that could revolutionize our understanding of wolf intelligence and social bonds. She produced 3 years of detailed notes she'd kept about Luna observations that read like scientific documentation despite being written by a teenager. The wolf's injury, treatment, recovery, and release were meticulously recorded, along with behavioral observations that showed Luna had maintained wild instincts throughout her rehabilitation. I broke federal law, Emily admitted. Fine me, charge me, whatever you need to do. But don't punish Luna's pack for having better moral judgment than the humans who drove me off that cliff. The room erupted in debate. Environmental groups rallied behind Emily. Ranchers worried about precedent. Scientists argued for the research opportunity. In the end, a compromise emerged. Luna's pack would remain but be monitored intensively, with Emily consulting on the research project despite her lack of formal credentials. It was during this chaotic week that Emily finally met with Rebecca Mitchell. The woman who'd given birth to her arrived at the hospital carrying a box of letters and photographs, her face showing 18 years of compressed grief. I was 15, Rebecca began without preamble. Your father was 17, Michael Crowfeather. We thought we were in love. Probably were in the way teenagers can be. When he joined the army, we promised to wait for each other. Emily studied the woman who shared her facial structure but not her coloring. Where Emily was dark-haired with those distinctive green-gold eyes, Rebecca was blonde with brown eyes, Sarah's coloring, Sarah's features. He died in Afghanistan before he knew about you, Rebecca continued. My parents were prominent in Billings society. A teenage pregnancy with a Native American boy who'd died overseas, they couldn't handle the scandal. They arranged everything through St. Mary's. Made me promise never to speak of it. You could have found me, Emily said quietly. The Carters have lived in Montana my whole life. I know. When you moved to Whitefish 5 years ago, I saw you at a school event and nearly fainted. You looked so much like Michael, but with my mother's eyes. I wanted to say something 1,000 times, but I'd built this life, this family. Tom didn't know. Sarah didn't know. How could I destroy everything? So you let Sarah destroy me instead. Rebecca flinched. I tried to make her stop without explaining why. Every time she said something cruel about you, it felt like knives in my chest. But I was a coward. I've been a coward since I was 15. From the doorway, a shadow moved. Sarah had left the psychiatric ward AMA against medical advice and made her way to Emily's room. She stood there, hollow-eyed and trembling, having heard everything. You gave her away, Sarah said to her mother, her voice barely audible. Your first daughter? You gave her away and kept me and never told me I had a sister. Sarah, you shouldn't be here, Rebecca started, but Sarah stepped into the room. I tried to kill my sister, Sarah said, looking directly at Emily. I tried to kill you because I thought you'd stolen something from me. But you didn't steal anything. You were thrown away, just like I threw you off that cliff. The 4 women, 2 mothers, 2 daughters existed in that hospital room with 18 years of secrets finally exposed. Emily could have been cruel, could have twisted the knife of guilt deeper. Instead, she said something that changed everything. We're all thrown away by something, Emily said. Our births, our circumstances, our choices, our fears. But we can choose what we do with that falling. We can hit the rocks, or we can find a ledge to land on and wait for the wolves to come. Sarah broke completely then, falling to her knees beside Emily's bed. I'm sorry, God. I'm so sorry. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve anything. You're right, Emily said, causing everyone to freeze. You don't deserve forgiveness. That's why forgiveness is a gift, not a payment. But gifts come with conditions. You're going to work at the rehabilitation center. You're going to learn what it means to heal something instead of hurt it. And maybe, eventually, we can figure out how to be sisters who don't throw each other off cliffs. Tom Harrison had been standing in the hallway, having followed his daughter's escape from the psychiatric ward. He entered the room now. his ranger uniform replaced by civilian clothes, his badge already turned in despite Emily's plea to the district attorney. "I resigned," he said simply. "A ranger who gives his disturbed daughter access to restricted areas, who fails to see the danger signs, who enables attempted murder that's not someone who should have authority in these mountains." "That's stupid," Emily said bluntly. "Sarah needs stability, not a father destroyed by guilt. The park needs experienced rangers, not whatever rookie they'll hire to replace you. And I need—" She paused, surprising herself with the words. "I need to know that someone who understands these mountains is watching over Luna's pack." Tom studied this remarkable young woman his daughter had tried to kill. "Why?" he asked simply. "Why are you doing this? Why aren't you pressing charges, demanding justice, making us all pay?" Emily was quiet for a long moment, thinking about Luna, about the wolf who'd recognized her after 3 years, who'd called for help in the only way she could. "Because punishment doesn't heal anything. It just creates more wounds. The rehabilitation center taught me that. You don't fix a broken wing by breaking it more. You set it, support it, and give it time to remember how to fly." Margaret Carter, who'd been silent through all of this, finally spoke. "You're asking us to trust the people who nearly killed you." "No," Emily corrected. "I'm asking them to earn trust. There's a difference." The district attorney, who'd been listening from the doorway, made her decision. "Restorative justice program, 2 years probation for Sarah, mandatory therapy, 500 hours at the wildlife center. Tom Harrison's resignation is withdrawn. The park needs him. Tyler Ross and Ashley Chen get 200 hours of community service each for conspiracy to commit assault. Rebecca Mitchell." She paused, looking at the broken woman. "No charges for past adoption decisions, but mandatory family counseling." "And Emily?" David Carter asked protectively. "Emily gets a federal wildlife rehabilitation license retroactively approved for her work with Luna, and a full scholarship to study wildlife biology at the University of Montana, courtesy of an anonymous donor who was moved by this story." The DA smiled slightly. "Sometimes justice isn't about punishment. Sometimes it's about finding a way forward." As the adults sorted through legal complexities, Emily and Sarah sat in silence. Two sisters who'd found each other through violence but might yet build something from the wreckage. Outside, Luna's howl echoed across the mountains, not an alarm this time, but a simple wolf song, wild and free and unexpectedly hopeful. The 2 weeks following the restorative justice decision should have brought peace, but trauma has its own timeline, indifferent to legal resolutions. Sarah Mitchell discovered this at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, standing at the exact spot on Eagle's Crest where she'd pushed her half-sister, her bare feet bleeding from the 2-mile hike she'd made in darkness, wearing only pajamas despite the 40-degree mountain air. She'd slipped out of her house while her parents slept, disabled the alarm system with practiced ease, and driven her mother's car to the trailhead. The sleeping pills she'd stolen from Rebecca's medicine cabinet rattled in her pocket, 40 of them. More than enough. She'd planned to take them first, then jump, ensuring no miraculous ledge would save her as it had saved Emily. But as she stood at the precipice, moonlight illuminating the fatal drop, she found herself unable to move, not from fear of death. She'd been courting that for 2 weeks, but from the memory of Emily's eyes in the hospital, offering forgiveness she didn't deserve. The pills felt like cowardice now. The jump felt like repetition. She stood frozen between living and dying. A girl caught on her own psychological ledge. Jake Williams had been unable to sleep since the incident, haunted by his failure to prevent it. Some instinct guilt, concern, or maybe just the insomnia that had plagued him made him check Sarah's Instagram at 4 a.m. She'd posted a single image, Eagle's Crest at sunrise, with the caption, "Coming full circle." The photo was from their hike 2 weeks ago, but something about posting it at this hour sent ice through his veins. He called her phone straight to voicemail. Called her house, no answer. Then he did something that would have seemed insane to anyone else. He called Tom Harrison, waking the ranger at 4:15 a.m. "Sir, I think Sarah's at Eagle's Crest. The actual cliff. Right now. Tom didn't question, didn't hesitate. 20 minutes later, he and Jake were racing up the trail with flashlights. Tom radioing for backup while trying to stay calm enough to navigate the treacherous path in darkness. They found her standing statue still at the edge, pills scattered on the ground where she'd dropped them, tears frozen on her cheeks in the pre-dawn cold. "Sarah," Tom called softly, afraid any sudden sound might startle her over the edge. "Sweetheart, step back, please." "I can't," she whispered. "I can't step back and I can't step forward. I'm stuck, Dad. I've been stuck here for 2 weeks, even when I was at home. This is where I live now." Jake, despite his terror, found words Emily might have said. "She forgave you, Sarah. Emily forgave you." "That makes it worse," Sarah screamed, finally showing animation. "Don't you see? She should hate me. She should want me dead instead. She saved me from prison, and now I have to live with what I did. I have to see her at the center, help the animals she loves, pretend I'm becoming better when all I am is the girl who tried to kill her sister." It took 2 hours of careful negotiation, Tom inching closer while Jake kept talking, before they managed to pull Sarah back from the edge. The psychiatric hold this time was involuntary, indefinite, with suicide precautions that included 24-hour observation. Rebecca Mitchell, aged 10 years and 10 days, sitting beside her daughter's hospital bed, watching her sleep under heavy sedation. The community of Whitefish, which had initially raged against Sarah, began to shift. The attempted suicide humanized her in a way the attempted murder hadn't. Local news coverage turned sympathetic, focusing on the mental health crisis among teenagers, the pressure of family secrets, the weight of irreversible actions. Sarah went from monster to cautionary tale, though neither narrative captured the complex truth of a girl destroyed by her own capacity for cruelty. Emily, recovering at home, saw the news about Sarah's suicide attempt on her phone. The guilt hit her like a physical blow, sending her into a panic attack that had David Carter calling for an ambulance. She hadn't pressed charges to avoid more tragedy, but her mercy had only delayed it. "This is my fault," she gasped between hyperventilated breaths. "I should have let them prosecute." She needed consequences, not forgiveness. "I played God and nearly got her killed." The panic attacks became daily occurrences. Sleep brought nightmares of falling, of Sarah falling, of both of them falling while Luna watched helplessly from above. Emily, who'd been so strong in the hospital, fell apart in the safety of home. She couldn't return to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. The drive took her too close to the trail that led to Eagle's Crest. She couldn't attend therapy because leaving the house triggered overwhelming anxiety. Margaret Carter took leave from work to stay with her daughter, watching Emily fade like a photograph left in sunlight. The girl who'd survived a murder attempt was being killed by survival, haunted by both her own trauma and the trauma she'd triggered in others. "She needs to see that wolf," David said one evening, watching Emily stare blankly at a nature documentary about wolves. "Luna, she needs to know Luna is safe." But Luna was far from safe. Ranch owner Bill Hutchinson, whose property bordered Glacier National Park, had filed a formal complaint claiming Luna's pack had killed 3 of his cattle. He had photographs of the dead animals, torn apart in ways consistent with wolf predation. He demanded immediate action, the pack's elimination under the federal provisions that allowed killing wolves that threatened livestock. Tom Harrison, despite being emotionally exhausted from his daughter's crisis, investigated personally. Something felt wrong about Hutchinson's claim. The man had been vocally anti-wolf for years, had opposed their reintroduction to the ecosystem, had lost multiple lawsuits trying to graze his cattle illegally on parkland. Tom examined the kill sites with Michelle Crow Dog, comparing them to known wolf predation patterns. "Look at this," Crow Dog pointed out. "The bite marks are wrong, too narrow for adult wolves. And see these cuts? Those are knife marks, made post-mortem. He killed his own cattle and blamed the wolves," Tom said with disgust. 3 cattle at current market prices versus getting the most famous wolf pack in America killed for him. That's a bargain. But proving it was one thing. Stopping the political machinery was another. Hutchinson had connections. His brother was a state senator. His cousin ran the largest newspaper in northwestern Montana. The story of dangerous wolves that attacked a teenager merged with wolves killing cattle into a narrative that demanded action. Never mind that Luna had saved Emily, not attacked her. The truth was less compelling than fear. A public hearing was scheduled at Whitefish Community Center. The Park Service, under pressure, seemed ready to authorize either relocation or elimination of Luna's pack. Environmental groups mobilized, but rancher associations had deeper pockets and louder voices. Emily watched the news coverage from her bed, each report adding to her panic. Luna would die because of her, because she'd created a situation that made the wolves vulnerable. Her parents tried to shield her from the coverage, but Emily obsessively refreshed social media, watching the battle play out in real time. "You have to testify," Madison Brooks said, visiting Emily despite the Carter parents' attempts to limit visitors. "You're the only one people will listen to. The girl the wolves saved, your voice matters." "I can't even leave my house," Emily said flatly. "I have panic attacks in my own driveway." "Then the wolves die. Luna dies, because you're too scared to speak." It was harsh, but it was what Emily needed to hear. With her parents' help and a prescribed Xanax, she made it to the community center for the hearing. The room was packed, ranchers on one side, environmentalists on the other, media everywhere. Emily, in a wheelchair she didn't physically need but psychologically required, was wheeled to the microphone. Her voice shook at first, barely audible. Then she saw Hutchinson smirking in the front row, so sure of his victory, and something in Emily crystallized. "Luna didn't attack me," she said, stronger now. "She saved me. And Mr. Hutchinson knows that. He also knows that Luna's pack hasn't touched his cattle, because he killed them himself." The room erupted. Hutchinson jumped up, shouting about slander, demanding proof. That's when Jake Williams stood up in the back of the room, holding up his phone. "I have something," he announced. The room quieted as he connected his phone to the projection system. "I've been dealing with insomnia since the Cliff incident. I go for drives at night. 3 nights ago, I was near Hutchinson's ranch and saw something interesting." The video was grainy but clear enough. Bill Hutchinson dragging a dead calf from his truck, placing it in his field, then using what appeared to be modified tools to create marks resembling wolf bites. The timestamp showed 2:47 a.m., 3 days before he filed his complaint. "You little shit!" Hutchinson lunged toward Jake but was restrained by security. The hearing dissolved into chaos. Hutchinson was arrested for filing false reports and animal cruelty. The wolf elimination order was suspended pending further investigation. But the damage to public perception was done. The wolves were controversial now, their presence divisive. Emily had won the battle but felt no victory. Speaking had exhausted her completely. As she was wheeled out, she passed Sarah's empty chair. Sarah was supposed to attend as part of her treatment, showing support for the wolves that had saved Emily. Instead, she was in psychiatric hold, fighting her own demons. Outside the community center, protesters both for and against the wolves faced off. Someone threw a bottle. Police moved in. Emily watched from the van window as her hometown tore itself apart over wolves that had simply acted on instinct and loyalty. "They saved me," she whispered to her mother, "and I've destroyed them." That night, Luna's howl echoed across the mountains, unaware that her fate hung in bureaucratic balance. Emily heard it from her bedroom and wondered if it would be the last time. She'd survived the fall, but the landing seemed to be killing everyone around her. Sarah, the wolves, the community itself. Margaret held her daughter as she cried, both of them realizing that some tragedies don't end with rescue helicopters and medical miracles. Sometimes they just ripple outward, touching everything with their dark waves, until even acts of salvation become sources of sorrow. The local news led with, "Community divided over controversial wolf pack." National outlets picked up the story with, "The wolves that saved a girl may die for it." But in the psychiatric ward, Sarah Mitchell was past caring about news cycles. She sat in mandatory group therapy, learning that sometimes the hardest person to forgive isn't the one you hurt, but yourself. Tom Harrison, exhausted beyond measure, sat between two worlds, his duty to the park and its wolves, his devotion to his broken daughter. He'd thought the worst day of his life was seeing Emily on that ledge. He was wrong. The worst day was realizing that trauma doesn't end with rescue. Sometimes it's just the beginning of a longer fall. And in the mountains, Luna's pack continued their ancient patterns, oblivious to human politics, following instincts older than any courthouse or Congress. They'd saved a girl who'd once saved them, completing a circle that humans seemed determined to break. Madison Brooks had carried the weight of her secret for 3 weeks, until it finally broke her. She arrived at the Carter house uninvited on a rain-soaked Thursday evening, her laptop clutched against her chest like a confession she could no longer bear. David Carter almost didn't let her in. Emily's anxiety had been so severe that visitors were strictly limited, but something in Madison's expression made him step aside. "I have to show Emily something," Madison said, her voice hollow. "Something that changes everything about that day." Emily sat in the living room, thinner than before, her eyes carrying the exhausted look of someone fighting battles on multiple fronts. She barely acknowledged Madison until the other girl opened her laptop and said, "I was recording. The whole time on the cliff. I was recording everything." The room went silent. Margaret Carter moved closer. David's hand found Emily's shoulder, and Madison turned the laptop screen toward them. "I'd been documenting Sarah's bullying for months," Madison explained, her hands shaking. "Small videos, evidence in case things got worse. I thought maybe someday I'd show them to the principal or her parents. When Sarah invited you on the hike, I knew something bad would happen, so I set my phone to record and hid it in my jacket pocket. The angle is weird, but the audio is clear, and you can see enough." The video began with Sarah's explosion about the diary, her revelation about Rebecca being Emily's biological mother. But what came next, what Madison had never told the police? Paralyzed by fear and shame changed everything, on screen, after the push. Sarah immediately lunged forward, screaming, "No, oh God, no!" Her hands reached out desperately, and she would have gone over the edge herself trying to grab Emily if Tyler hadn't yanked her back roughly. "Let me go!" Sarah screamed in the video. "I have to help her. I didn't mean I have to." "You'll fall too, you idiot!" Tyler's voice, cruel and practical. Then Ashley's contribution, cold as mountain water. "We need to leave, now, before anyone finds out we were here." "We can't leave her." That was Jake, already trying to climb down. "She's probably dead anyway," Tyler said. "And if we stay, we all go to prison." Sarah pushed her. "We all saw it. We're accomplices." The video showed Sarah collapsing, hysterical, trying to crawl to the edge while Tyler and Ashley physically restrained her. It was Jake who finally broke free from the group paralysis, attempting his desperate climb while Madison called 911. But the most damning part was Tyler and Ashley's continued attempts to flee, only stopped when Luna's pack arrived. Tyler said if we all stuck to the same story, that Sarah meant to do it, that it was premeditated, she'd get the worst punishment and we'd get deals. Madison sobbed, but Sarah was destroyed by what she'd done. It was instantaneous regret, and Tyler and Ashley made everything worse, prevented her from trying to help, and then shaped the narrative afterward. Emily stared at the screen, processing this reversal. Sarah had pushed her, yes, but it had been a moment of explosive emotion, not calculated murder, and her immediate response had been to try to save her, not flee. "Why didn't you show this before?" Margaret asked, though not unkindly. "Because I'm a coward," Madison said simply. "Because Tyler's father is a lawyer who threatened to destroy my family if I didn't support their version. Because I was scared, but Sarah tried to kill herself, and Emily's falling apart, and the wolves might die, and I can't carry this anymore." David immediately called the district attorney. Within an hour, new arrest warrants were issued for Tyler Ross and Ashley Chen, not just for conspiracy, but for obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and preventing emergency aid. The narrative that had consumed Whitefish shifted again. Sarah was still guilty, but Tyler and Ashley were revealed as the true villains who'd transformed a terrible impulsive moment into something far worse. But the revelations were just beginning. Tom Harrison arrived at the Carter house an hour after Madison, looking like he'd aged a decade in 3 weeks. He carried a manila envelope and the expression of someone about to perform his own kind of surgery, cutting out old secrets before they went septic. "I need to tell you all something," he began, not sitting when offered a chair. "About why I became a ranger, about why I understood Sarah's burden maybe better than I should have." The story he told was from 1987 when he was 17, a party at Eagle's Crest, the same cliff, because tragedy loves repetition. His best friend Danny Morrison, drunk and showing off, walking the edge like a tightrope performer. Tom, equally drunk, thought it would be funny to pretend to push him just a fake lunge, a joke to make everyone scream. "But Danny flinched," Tom said, his voice breaking on the 37-year-old memory. "He flinched and stepped wrong and fell. Not all the way he hit that same ledge that saved you, Emily, but his spine snapped." Paralyzed from the chest down at 17, the room absorbed this revelation in stunned silence. I wasn't charged. Everyone agreed it was an accident, just kids being stupid. Danny even forgave me, said it wasn't my fault, but I knew better. I'd caused it with my recklessness, my need to be funny, my failure to think about consequences. Tom finally sat, suddenly looking every one of his 55 years. "I became a ranger to guard that cliff, to prevent others from doing what I did. And then my own daughter. It's like the mountain was waiting all these years to collect its debt through her." "That's not how guilt works," Emily said quietly, speaking for the first time since Madison's revelation. "It doesn't transfer through bloodlines. Sarah made her choice, just like you made yours. The difference is what you do after." Tom looked at this remarkable young woman his daughter had tried to kill. "I've spent 37 years trying to atone. It doesn't get lighter." "Maybe because you've been carrying it alone," Emily suggested. Before Tom could respond, another car pulled up outside. Rebecca Mitchell entered without knocking, wild-eyed and desperate. "Is it true?" she demanded. "About the video, about Tyler and Ashley." "It's true," Madison confirmed. "Sarah tried to save her. She was prevented from trying." Rebecca collapsed into a chair, sobbing with what might have been relief. Then she looked at Emily and said, "I have to tell you the rest. About your father. The whole truth this time." The story Rebecca told rewrote Emily's entire understanding of her origins. Michael Crowfeather hadn't died in Afghanistan. He'd never even made it to basic training. At 17, he'd killed someone, a 25-year-old man named Derek Hollis, who'd been attempting to rape Rebecca at a party. Michael had used a knife, stabbing Hollis repeatedly in what the prosecution argued was excessive force, while the defense claimed it was protecting Rebecca's life. "He pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter to spare me from testifying," Rebecca said. "Got 15 years. I was pregnant by then, but my parents said a baby whose father was in prison for killing someone would have no chance at a normal life. They forced the adoption. He's alive." Emily's voice was barely a whisper. "My biological father is alive. He was released 6 months ago. He's been living on the Blackfeet Reservation, working construction. He wrote you letters for 18 years, one every month. I have them all. My parents intercepted them, gave them to me when I turned 30, thinking enough time had passed. But I was married to Tom by then, had Sarah, had built this perfect life on lies." Rebecca pulled out a box from her bag, hundreds of letters, each addressed to my daughter, because Michael had never known Emily's adopted name. Letters about his heritage, his hopes for her, his sorrow for not being there, his understanding if she never wanted to know him. Emily held one letter, dated on her 5th birthday, reading Michael's words. "Today you are 5, and I wonder if you love animals like your mother did, if you have her kindness or my stubbornness. I wonder if you feel the pull of the mountains like I always did, if wolves sing to you in your dreams." "Wolves," Emily said, looking up sharply. "He mentioned wolves." That's when the final revelation came, though from an unexpected source. Michelle Crowdog, the ranger who'd discovered Luna's GPS data, had been sitting in her truck outside, working up courage to knock. She entered now, carrying ancestral knowledge that would complete the circle. "I need to tell you about your grandmother," Crow Dog said to Emily. "Michael Crowfeather's mother, Anna Crowfeather. She was my great-aunt, and she had a gift." The story Crow Dog told stretched back generations. Anna Crowfeather had been known as the Wolf Caller, a woman who could communicate with wolves in ways that defied explanation. Not mystically, Crow Dog was careful to emphasize, but through an understanding of their behavior so profound it seemed supernatural. She'd been the one to broker peace between ranchers and wolf packs in the 1960s, before the wolves were nearly eliminated. "Your birth was unusual," Crow Dog continued. "March 15th, 2006, the night of a penumbral lunar eclipse. Anna always said wolves were most aware during eclipses, most likely to remember their ancient connections to humans. She died the week before you were born, but she left something." Crow Dog produced an old journal, written in a mixture of English and Blackfeet. "She dreamed of you. Not mystically, she knew Michael had a girlfriend, knew the patterns of things. She wrote, 'The child will be torn from her roots like wolves were torn from these mountains. But like the wolves, she'll return. And when she does, they'll recognize her as Anna's bloodline, the girl who speaks with wolves not through magic, but through recognition of shared survival.'" Emily's pendant, the wolf pendant that had arrived mysteriously on her 16th birthday, suddenly made sense. "You sent it," she said to Crow Dog. "Anna left it with instructions to give it to Michael's child when they turned 16. I didn't know it was you until the cliff incident, until I saw you on the news and recognized Anna's eyes in your face." The room sat in stunned silence, processing how many secrets had shaped this tragedy. Emily's father, alive and free. Rebecca's rape and rescue. Tom's parallel guilt from decades past. Anna Crowfeather's legacy of wolf connection. Each revelation recontextualized everything that had come before. "Does Michael know," Emily asked, "that I'm his daughter?" "He saw the news coverage," Crow Dog said. "He recognized you immediately. You look just like Anna did at your age. He's been waiting, hoping you might want to meet him, but he won't approach unless you choose it." Emily looked around the room at her adoptive parents who'd raised her with love, at Tom carrying decades of guilt, at Rebecca drowning in her own secrets, at Madison finally free of her burden. All these tangled lives, these hidden truths, these connections that had taken violence to reveal. "Luna knew," Emily said suddenly, "when I saved her 3 years ago. She somehow knew I was Anna's great-granddaughter. That's why she came back. Not magic. Like you said, recognition, genetic memory, scent markers, something scientific we don't understand yet. The university wants to study it," Crow Dog confirmed. "The behavioral genetics of human wolf recognition. With your permission, they'd like to document Luna's pack's response to you specifically, compared to other humans. It could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies memory and connection." But Emily was thinking of Sarah, sitting in psychiatric hold, believing she was a monster who'd tried to kill her sister in cold blood. The video changed that narrative. Sarah had been a girl overwhelmed by emotion who immediately regretted her action, prevented from trying to help by friends who were more concerned with self-preservation than human life. "I need to see Sarah," Emily announced. "She needs to know about the video. She needs to know she's not the monster she thinks she is." "The doctors won't allow it," Tom said. "She's on strict isolation except for family." "Then make me family," Emily said firmly. "Legal guardian, medical proxy, whatever it takes. She's my sister, half-sister. But still, and she's been carrying the wrong story about that day." As the adults debated logistics, Emily held her biological father's letters, feeling the weight of all these untold stories. Every person in this tragedy had been shaped by secrets, by shame, by guilt they'd carried alone. The push off the cliff had been just one moment in a chain of hidden truths stretching back generations. Outside, Luna howled in the distance, not an alarm this time, but a regular wolf song. Emily wondered if wolves had their own secrets, their own generational memories, their own ways of passing down truth. Perhaps that's what Anna Crowfeather had understood, that connection between species wasn't mystical, but historical, built on countless small recognitions across time. The truth hadn't set anyone free, not yet, but at least now they were all falling from the same cliff, aware of each other's descent, reaching out in the dark for something to hold on to together. 6 months after the fall that changed everything, Emily Carter and Sarah Mitchell stood side by side at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, their hands covered in the same blood, not human this time, but from a golden eagle that had collided with a wind turbine. They worked in practiced synchronization, Sarah holding the bird steady while Emily sutured the wing, their movements reflecting hours of shared labor that had slowly built something neither would dare call sisterhood. Not yet. The center had been transformed. A new wolf sanctuary program, funded by anonymous donors moved by the story and matching federal grants, provided a dedicated space for wolves that couldn't return to the wild. Tom Harrison, reinstated as both ranger and the center's director, supervised from the observation deck. His resignation had been rejected by unanimous vote from the Park Service Board, who recognized that his experience and dedication, tempered by personal tragedy, made him invaluable. "Steady," Emily murmured as the eagle stirred. Sarah adjusted her grip, no longer flinching at the proximity to predators. 5 months of court-mandated service had become voluntary dedication. Even after her required hours were complete, she returned each day, finding in the wounded animals a mirror for her own healing. Jake Williams and Madison Brooks arrived for their weekend shift, bringing coffee and the easy camaraderie of shared trauma transformed into purpose. Tyler Ross and Ashley Chen worked in separate areas. The court had wisely mandated they serve their sentences at different times, their conspiracy to obstruct justice earning them each 300 hours of community service and probation that would follow them through college. That afternoon, Emily met her biological father for the 20th time. Michael Crowfeather no longer felt like a stranger, though neither did he feel quite like father. He was something in between a connection to heritage she was still learning to understand. They sat by the wolf enclosure, watching Luna's pack through reinforced fencing that allowed observation while ensuring safety. "Your grandmother would be proud," Michael said, his voice carrying the careful tone of someone still learning how to be present after 18 years of forced absence. "Anna always said the wolves would return to our family when the time was right." Emily wore her heritage more visibly now, the wolf pendant openly displayed, her dark hair often braided in the style Michael's mother had worn. She remained a Carter legally and emotionally. David and Margaret still her true parents, but she'd gained an extended family that included Michael's relatives on the Blackfeet Reservation, who'd welcomed her with ceremonies that helped her understand her place in a larger story. Rebecca Mitchell attended therapy 3 times a week, sometimes with Tom, sometimes alone, always circling the same wounds, the sexual assault she'd survived, the child she'd given up, the daughter she'd nearly lost to secrets. Her relationship with Tom survived, scarred but stronger for having been tested. With Emily, she maintained careful distance, not rejection, but respect for boundaries that might take years to cross. Luna's pack had been designated under special conservation status after the scientific community documented what became known as the Luna effect, the first proven case of individual human recognition maintained across years of separation. Emily's research, despite her lack of formal degree, was being included in papers from the University of Montana. She'd been accepted for the fall semester, her scholarship covering not just tuition but research opportunities that would let her formally study the connection between humans and wolves. The ceremony at Eagle's Crest drew nearly the entire town. Indigenous elders from the Blackfeet Nation performed a blessing for both Emily and Sarah, acknowledging their intertwined fates and the healing that had begun through their shared wound. New safety railings had been installed along the cliff's edge, and a bronze plaque read simply, "Sometimes we must fall to learn how to rise," dedicated to second chances and the wolves who teach us loyalty transcends species. As the sun set, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, a familiar howl rose from the valley. Luna appeared on a distant ridge, her pack silhouetted against the dying light. The wolves sang not for the humans, not for any reason people could understand, but simply because wilderness endures regardless of human drama. The final task of the day brought everything full circle. A young wolf, rehabilitated after being orphaned by a vehicle strike, was ready for release. Emily and Sarah carried the cage together to the sanctuary's edge, where wilderness began. As they opened the door, their hands touched briefly on the latch, not quite forgiveness, not quite family, but something being built one shared gesture at a time. The wolf emerged cautiously, then bounded toward freedom. Toward Luna's pack that would likely accept or reject it according to laws older than any human court. Emily and Sarah stood together, watching it disappear into the forest's embrace. Tom watched from a respectful distance, seeing in these two young women something Anna Crowfeather might have recognized: the truth that sometimes the deepest connections are forged not through blood or birth, but through surviving each other's worst moments and choosing to heal together. In the Montana wilderness, where eagles soar and wolves sing, two sisters found that sometimes you must fall to learn how to truly rise. I've told you this story because I need you to understand something about gratitude and family that took me years to learn. We think gratitude is saying thank you, writing cards, remembering kindness. But real gratitude, the kind Luna showed when she recognized Emily's voice and refused to let her die alone, is written in our actions across years, sometimes across species, in ways we don't expect. Emily saved a wolf believing no one would know. Luna saved Emily when everyone was watching. That's the thing about gratitude. It doesn't keep score or wait for the perfect moment. It simply remembers and responds when remembering matters most. And family Sarah and Emily taught me that family isn't just about blood or birth certificates. Sometimes family is the person who pushed you off a cliff learning to catch others who fall. Sometimes it's adoptive parents who love you through your worst moments, or a biological father who writes letters for 18 years to a daughter he's never met. Sometimes it's even a wolf who remembers your kindness. We're all standing on the edge of our own cliffs. Really. The question isn't whether we'll fall, we all fall eventually. The question is who will howl for help when we do, and who will answer that call. That's what gratitude creates: a network of connections that catch us when we least expect it, when we least deserve it, when we need it most.